Well, I went into this season thinking the NL Central would be the easiest division to predict. Boy, was I wrong. Nothing makes sense, and JD Heffron is here to make less sense about it from Locked On Cardinals. This is Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to a Locked On MLB, Locked On Cardinals crossover. This is the podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball on my show, and on JD's show, they talk about the St. Louis Cardinals. Do not be deceived by my old school Mariners shirt. We are going to be talking about the NL Central today. And that it's weird. Hey, in case you're wondering, I am an Emmy-nominated television producer who has been a baseball podcast for over a decade. It's my fifth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. And if you're keeping score at home, today's episode is brought to you by Birddogs. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. They'll throw in a free custom Birddogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Hey, joining me on the show today for the first time in the regular season. You were on the show in the off season, but your first appearance during the regular season. JD Heffron, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much, Sully. I wish I had more positive things to talk about as far as how things are going for the Cardinals, but I'm glad to be here just talking ball with you, buddy.
Well, appreciate it, man. Listen to those pipes. By the way, follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast and Instagram. And JD, where are you?
You can find me at JD Sports Radio as well as LO_Cardinals. Either one of those, that will be me responding to you.
Okay, before we dive right into the St. Louis Cardinals right now, I do have to bring this up. I think the last time you were on this feed was when we were doing the divisional previews, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, it was March. It was an innocent time. And at that time, I said, the Cardinals look like the only team that are trying. I said, the Cardinals going into this year, I said, the Brewers looked good, but excuse me, I should learn how to use the cough button. The Brewers looked good, but there was already rumblings of whether or not they wanted to trade Corbin Burnes. And so you got the sense that if they stumbled out of the gate, they might be sellers. The Reds look like a mess. The Pirates had talent, but we're not there yet. The Cubs, nobody knows what the Cubs are. And I said, just by default, I said, the Cardinals are going to win this division, probably walking away. And I think I remember saying, what would happen if the Cardinals had a bad year? And we all laughed. So what we're seeing right now is that bizarre Twilight Zone into the Spider-Verse alternate universe where a star-studded Cardinals team is, as of this recording, the worst team in the National League.
Yeah. It's a bizarro world, Sully. It's hard to explain it because there are so many things that have gone wrong that have led to these losses. People keep wanting to know, who do we point the finger at? Who do we fire? Well, whose fault is this? And the answer to that is it's everybody's fault. It's not just one person. So it's been very, very strange. And you've seen, like you mentioned, that the Pirates were a team that you're like, they got some talent. We're not sure if they're there yet. The Reds seem to be a year ahead of where people thought they might be, where they might be competing next year was what a lot of people thought about. And instead, they've made the jump. And then the Brewers, despite losing some key players to injury so far this season, have been able to weather the storm. And Corbin Burnes doesn't look like he's going anywhere.
Okay, before we get into who to blame and to even, survey the damage of what's gone on with the Cardinals, let's take a look at the other contenders in the National League Central. Because now we have seen, all we have to do, and believe me, Met fans say this like it's their mantra while they're doing yoga, that at this time the Nationals had a losing record, at this time the Braves had a losing record, at this time the Phillies, they're pointing to, yes, you can certainly come back, especially, and one reason why for the Mets and for St. Louis, it is not irrational to point to recent, comeback stories, is because the Mets have a ton of talent and St. Louis has talent. And the teams that are in front of them right now, none of them remind me of the 1998 New York Yankees. But assuming, and we'll get to the Cardinals in segment 2 and 3, but assuming St. Louis doesn't pull a Lazarus here and find their way back to the top of the NL Central, which one of the 4 teams ahead of them do you think has the most realistic chance of being the one to have the honor of playing in a wild card, 2 best of 3 series in October?
I go with Milwaukee first, just because they have been good more, recently over the last couple of years. They've been a solid team. And I mentioned that they've been able to get through some of the injuries they've dealt with, obviously with Brandon Woodruff being out. That's a huge blow. I mean, that guy would be an ace on most teams. And for him to not be around, that's tough. But Corbin Burns, after having kind of a slow start, has gotten back to his dominant form. And I just don't know whether or not I can trust Pittsburgh yet, because you've seen them where they took off and then they came crashing back down to earth. Now they're just kind of floating there. The Reds have been, they just keep injecting a new young superstar, it seems, every other week. And they've got a lot of energy and a lot of confidence right now, and you're seeing it, but yet they're still a game below 500 at the time of this recording. So it's not like they're just blowing away the competition. And the guys they are beating seem to be teams that they're not great. The Cardinals, the Royals. I mean, if you want to hang your hat on beating those teams, that's fine. But let's see how they do against Houston. And, when the Yankees were in town in Cincinnati, they came in and wiped the floor with the Reds. So swept them. So got to see them beat good teams before they start getting too excited.
Now, I will say in Cincinnati's defense, they did take 2 out of 3 from Los Angeles. They did take 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. So they haven't all been tomato cans from Missouri that they've been beating up. But yeah, they happened to catch the Royals at their absolute worst, and and then they caught they caught your Cardinals when they were floundering, as opposed to now. Yeah, it's interesting. We are the Reds are going to be facing Houston, and then they'll face Colorado. But then they're going to face the Braves, and they're going to face Baltimore after that. So 3 out of the next 4 teams for Cincinnati are going to be a real test about this recent win streak. And you made a great point that, like, if we had got to this point in a normal year, okay, let's say the Cardinals were on path to win like 90, 91 games. And we looked up and we would see, hey, the Pirates and the Reds are both hanging around 500. That's a nice improvement. We'd be patting them on the head like, good job. You're improving. And the Reds are doing exactly what a team like Cincinnati should do, which is saying, hey, if we got talented players in AAA, bring them up. What is the worst thing? The worst case scenario is the De La Cruzes and everybody get some major league experience. They treat this like extended spring training. Best case scenario is they energize the team and they steal a very winnable National League Central. The same thing with Pittsburgh. When you look at them and go like, hey, under normal circumstances, hey, look at that. They're winning more than they're losing. This is a foundational year. This is kind of like what the Royals did in 2013, where after all those losing seasons, they finally had a winning season, and that kind of led the foundation. But because the Cardinals found the bottom of the standings, grabbed a shovel and kept on digging, suddenly, a sub 500 Reds team playing people who I wouldn't know if they were wearing "Hello, my name is" stickers on their uniform are only a game and a half out of first place at this point.
Yeah. And calling themselves America's team. Have you seen that?
I have. America's team should have a winning record. America's team should have a winning record. That's a little bit of, hey. You beat up on the Royals and the Cardinals. Let's pump the brakes a little bit here. This is not the big red machine again. This is the by the way, just giving a shout out to another show on the Locked On Podcast Network. Please check out Locked On Cubs. They've been killing it on that show. The shows have been great, very blunt, and very straightforward. And Cub fans, you should be enraged because you play in the biggest market in a team that could print money. You've had a few, it's been, you had the big teardown a couple of years ago, but you brought in some other players. And a 500 team could have images of a division title dancing in your head. And the Cubs are 7 games under 500. It is and I just think it's a disgrace what the Cubs are, will be, currently are. I have no clue why David Ross is the manager of the Cubs right now. I don't know what they're doing. And if the Pirates, Brewers, or Reds wind up winning the division, the Cubs should be kicking themselves, thinking, we had a shot to steal a division.
Yeah. We
had a shot to, again, even if it's a weak, 2005 Padre, remember when the Padres won the division going 82-80 in 2005? That's still a division title. They still won. They still got to play some playoff baseball. And
hey, the Cardinals had a similar team that just was over the 500 mark that won the World Series.
That's right. That's right. Was it 2006? They won like 80. Was it 84 wins? 83 wins? It was not a great team.
No, just got hot at the right time.
Yeah, and so, oh man. So anyway, look at that's the state of the National League Central. It's a weird state.
Mm-hmm.
It is a very weird state. It is Florida weird. That's how weird.
Who do you like to take the division? If I'm going Brewers as the safety pick, who's the one team?
I kind of like the Pirates. I kind of like the Pirates. I think that if the Brewers, if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said Milwaukee. But the fact that Milwaukee hasn't been able to put on the aft thrusters, the fact that they have a clear lane to win a division, and they haven't taken advantage of it. And also the Pirates, I talked about this on the show when I had Ethan on from Locked On Pirates, that the Pirates were so good in April and so miserable in May, and yet didn't fall out of contention.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's something psychological, like, okay, in a normal year, you had a nice start, and you may have a shot at 500. Like, oh, wait a minute, we got beaten up, and we're still in first place. We still have a magic number that's being counted down right now. Mm-hmm. I think that in some ways, I'm afraid of the Reds a little bit, in that little bit of, hey, we got nothing to lose. What do we have to lose? Quality.
Yeah, it's a why not us moment for them right now.
This is a whole division of why not us.
Yeah.
So I think the Pirates, why not us, I trust a little more than the Reds, why not us. I think the Brewers are the safe pick, but because the Brewers should be up by 5 at this point.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
And that makes me worry. And what also makes me worry, we'll get to the next segment in a second, that this is such a weak year for the trade deadline.
Yes.
That the Brewers might just say, screw it, we'll trade Burns anyway. We can rebuild. But anyway, well, that's something to talk about when we, maybe at a later time. But let me just tell you something, JD, you look really comfortable right now. But I can only see you from the waist up. What's going on below? And did I just harass you?
That sounds a little perverted, but that's not what he means, folks. We're actually talking about the shorts that I'm wearing underneath, and we're talking about Birddogs because summer is here, and you want to look your best, but at the same time, you want to be comfortable, okay? You want to be fashionably acceptable when you go do whatever it is you're going to do this summer, whether it is going to baseball games or going golfing or going to lunch or dinner with family members and whatnot. It's nice to have a pair of shorts that you can wear for all of those occasions, and Birddogs is absolutely the answer if you're looking for that type of pair of shorts or pants, whichever one you're looking for. They've got the stretch khaki shorts. They're designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and in the leg area to give you that sculpted look that most men are looking for. You don't want the baggy look anymore. That's not in anymore. No. Especially for those of you who have these skinnier legs, they just disappear in baggy shorts. You get the Birddogs. they're going to show off the legs that you have down there. And they do the exact thing that the Lululemon brand does, but they fit way better because they aren't made of a stiff, restricting cotton that frankly just doesn't feel all that nice. You don't want to be sitting somewhere and you're just adjusting and moving around. That's not good. It's not a good look. You want to be able to just kind of lean back and enjoy everything that's going on. They use a cloud knit fit fabric that, looks like khaki, but it stretches. That way you get that slimmer fit without having to sacrifice any of your movement. One of the great things about it, Sully, I'm sure you've been there. Most men have. Get a little sweaty down below. Not the most comfortable thing in the world. They've got the anti-stink sweat wicking fabric that keeps you cool and dry all day long, no matter what you're doing. I wear them on the golf course. I wear them to dinners and stuff, and you should too. Go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. Enter the promo code LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler, which you can put all sorts of different beverages in, wink, wink, with your order. That's birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB for a free Yeti-style tumbler. You won't want to take your bird dogs off. We promise you.
Talking pants with JD Heffron. Well, speaking of pants that are being pulled off, the Cardinals fans have been pantsed by their team. I'm not trying to say this to sound mean by any stretch of the imagination. I have nothing against the Cardinals. I don't know what happened because I look at this team and I see, hey, they brought in Wilson Contreras. Mm-hmm. They still have Goldschmidt. They still have Arenado. They still have a ton of young players who keep coming through every day. There's this parade of young players. You have a rotation of Michaelis, Montgomery, Flaherty, Steven Matz, Jake Woodford, Adam Wainwright. Who am I missing? Jordan Montgomery, I said.
Rookie Matthew Liberatore has taken over a spot in the rotation now.
Now, do I think this team's going to make people forget about the 1967 Cardinals? No, but that still sounds like a solid team.
Yeah, and it's baffling to watch how they lose games each and every day. Wednesday's game, one of the worst of the year. Ridiculous. To be one strike away from winning a game 5-3 at home in front of your fans, and 2-run shot by Yastrzemski ties it up.
Yastrzemski hits the home run to tie it. I'm listening to that game live, and Yastrzemski hits the home run, and then when they have the stupid runner on base, the automatic runner, there was at no point did I feel like the Cardinals were going to win that game after Yastrzemski. It was almost a walk-off game-tying home run on the road. He hit the home run, and you could hear just the crowd deflated. And I was listening to the Giant feed, but I watched the home run, the clip later from the St. Louis TV feed, and the announcer actually said, "I don't believe it."
Yeah, he said that a lot this year. Our new announcer, Chip Carey, he's seen some really bad baseball.
Well, that is Chip Carey. I was about to say the guy sounds exactly like Chip Carey. Okay, well, there you go. His grandpa
they swiped him from the Braves this offseason. And
I didn't know. So, there you go.
Yeah, it's what keeps happening, because if you go and you look at the numbers and the stats, and you're like, wait, how is this team so bad? How are they losing so much? And it's just something new every night. There's no consistency. One day you've got the offense showing up. I mean, most times you score 5 runs in a 9-inning game, you expect to probably win that game in Major League Baseball. And, Wednesday, the bullpen falters. When a game where starting pitching is the star, Montgomery had a very good game on Wednesday. Something else happens that gives it away. The offense doesn't show up. They've just never been able to put all 3 aspects of the game, bullpen, offense, starting pitching, together to go on a run to make a difference and to catch up in what's going on here. And the other side of it that's really disturbing, that's really bothered Cardinal fans and myself, is the lack of fundamentals that they have been playing without, because it's all the silly stuff that happens too. The bad defense, bad base running, mistakes, not remembering how many outs there are, stuff that you're not used to seeing a Cardinals team,
a veteran Cardinals team.
They're doing it, and they do it a lot, and it's bizarre. And so a lot of people say this is clearly a leadership problem. That the leadership in the clubhouse, now that there is no Yachty or no Pujols from last year, that's the issue, and that Ollie Marmol is the problem, and he's got to go. But thinking that, it makes a lot of sense, and I see why people go to that area and say that's who it is. That's the problem. The manager's not preparing them properly, but yet your president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak, emphatically states how happy he is with the job that Ollie's been doing. Just said it like a week ago. After Wednesday's loss, the Cardinals star players, Paul Goldschmidt, Nolan Arenado, Adam Wainwright, step up and say, this is not Ollie's fault. This is not the coaching staff's fault. It's not them not doing their jobs. It's us. It's only us. We're not executing. Put the blame on us. They're sticking up for their manager. And normally when a team is going through a funk like this, and if it is a leadership problem at the top with somebody, say, like the manager, you kind of hear those guys throw him under the bus normally, or they just say, you just get the feel that they don't like the guy anymore, or they just don't talk about him in general. And that's not what we're getting, and I don't have an answer to how to fix anything. The simple answer is play better. You've got talent, play better.
And Schilt, when he was let go and Marmol came in, we're seeing it wasn't Schilt's fault. But I have nothing against Ollie Marmol. Nothing. Yeah. And I think Schilt did a good job. And I thought Marmol has done, last year they won the division, and if they hold on to that lead in the first game of the Phillies series, I think they probably advance. Yeah. Who knows how far they would have gone. I think they gotta Mozeliak, is that how you pronounce his last name?
Yeah,
he needs to work out there. I've targeted 3 players that I think he should trade for. One is Randy Arozarena, one is Sandy Alcantara, and the other is Zach Gallen. If he can acquire those 3 players, I think they'll be in good shape. Yeah. And for those of you who don't get that joke, JD, please explain it to my audience. I know the Cardinal fans get that joke.
Those are names of players who have gone on to superstardom in other locations after the Cardinals had them and traded them away. So that's why those are a kick in the jewels every time those names are brought up.
If Zach Gallen wins the Cy Young, and he's a candidate, I don't think he's the front runner right now, but if he has a dynamic second half, he definitely could. That means in one trade, they could have dealt away 2 Cy Young Award winners.
Yeah, unheard of, right? Craziness. Yeah. And it was a situation too where they got desperate. The guy they traded for, Marcell Ozuna, was coming off a monster year with the Marlins, a Gold Glove winner in left field, and I don't know how he won that because he's not very good defensively, but he won it. He was one of those guys that, it was when they had that meat of the order where it was Stanton, Yelich, and Ozuna. And Ozuna was crazy good when they traded for him. And it was a need for the Cardinals. And I still wonder if that particular trade has made them gun shy about moving any other prospects, because you saw last season there was the discussion about flirting with Juan Soto from the Nationals, and all of Cardinal Nation was like, yeah, let's get some excitement going. And then didn't happen.
I thought he was absolutely going to the Cardinals.
So did I.
Absolutely. But we're talking about trades. We're talking about trading big players. That's going to be a subject for the last segment. But first, we've got to talk about making your bets, and that is where you go to FanDuel. Now, look at FanDuel is the place for all your sports betting, for all the sports you want to bet on. It's the official sports betting partner of the NBA. But do you know what? If you want to go make your bets, now, if you want to make your bets on the Stanley Cup, you're too late. You want to make your bets on the NBA Finals, too late. But lots of other stuff happening up pretty soon. You get great promotions every day. Safe and secure application. You get paid instantly. There's no better place to bet all of your baseball action. Football is coming right around the corner than America's #1 sports book. And visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet up to $2,500. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon and get a no-sweat first bet for $2,500. FanDuel, it's the official sporting partner of the National Basketball Association. Here with JD Heffron and my weird sort of Cosell Keith Jackson hybrid that I go in from time to time. Go Cougs, Washington State, where my communications classes were done at the Edward R. Murrow School of Communications, but most of my classes were in Keith Jackson Hall.
Nice.
There at the Palouse. Look at Mozeliak has to be feeling a little bit of the heat on his buttocks. Mm-hmm. If I'm not mistaken, the Cardinals have lost 8 out of their last 9 postseason games. The only game that they've won in the last bunch of years has been during the COVID year, one of the games against San Diego. This is the 10th anniversary of the Cardinals' last pennant. And when you trade away the Arozarenas and the Alcantaras and the Gallons of the world to bring in the Ozunas, to bring in the Goldschmidts, to bring in the Arenados, I can't fault him for not being aggressive. But they haven't worked. Mm-hmm. The players he's traded away have become superstars, and the superstars he's brought in. Now, this is not a fault on Goldschmidt or Arenado, who right. Goldschmidt won the MVP last year, and between you and me, I would have given the MVP to Arenado, but it was a coin toss. You know, I think both had valid reasons. I leaned a little more to Arenado because the great offensive stats and what he brings defensively to the game. But again, it wasn't like I said, Goldschmidt, what are you talking about? You know, it wasn't, I totally got it. And, you know, you look up and they bring in Wilson Contreras. They go in, they make the big moves. And the result is, I'm going to go on a limb and say that it'll be 10 years we'll come and go without a pennant in St. Louis. I'm going to, as much as Met fans and every other National League fan is recounting the last bunch of National League champions, I don't see this Cardinal team doing that.
Tell me if you were to bet on FanDuel, you would say not on
the Cardinals. And at some point, when you have a GM who has gone for broke, and some of his moves have backfired on him, no, I don't blame Ollie. But at some point, do you say, hey, we got to take the car keys away from you?
Yeah, and he's actually been extended, so he's going to be here for a couple more years. And I agree with you. It's been a lot of they make a lot of mistakes. The trade ones, like, again, they fleece Colorado to get Arenado. They fleece Arizona to get Goldschmidt.
But then they got fleeced. Yeah. Then they also got fleeced elsewhere.
Yeah, but then you see those trades, the Tampa Bay trade with Rosarena for a Liberatore, who is showing promise, and it takes longer normally for pitchers to get up there, but to see a Rosarena immediately become a star in Tampa Bay, that was a tough pill to swallow. And then you get the Ozuna trade where everybody's excited for Ozuna, but you didn't know what you had yet in Alcantara or Gallen, and to see them go on to, like you said, possibly both of them winning a Cy Young, it's hard to come back from those types of trades and those types of mistakes. And then when you add on top of it the free agent mistakes that they've made over the years with, feeling like they had to go sign Dexter Fowler and signing guys like Andrew Miller, who are past their prime, and Brett Cecil. And, the Wilson Contreras thing is not working so far. I believe that he's better than what we're seeing. The weird benching and moving him to an outfielder / to the DH and then bringing him back to be a catcher. I threw the stat on my show the other day that since that went down, at the time, he was hitting, I believe it was 268. He's hit 127 since that whole fiasco took place. And I have no doubts it had a mental effect on him.
Of course it did.
And I think that's weird. I thought the handling of Jordan Walker this year has been weird. I haven't enjoyed that. I'm glad he's back, and I'm glad they're giving him ample playing time. But what are you going to do when Newbar and O'Neill come back? If O'Neill comes back, are you going to bench him or send him back down now? I mean, I don't agree with how that's been handled. It's been odd.
I think at this point you have to keep him up, because if he's your outfielder of the future, and he supposedly is, then you have to say, and you look at this team that is now, then you've got to be able to say, hey, you have to be up here now. This is your spot. Mm-hmm. You know what? I don't mean to bring it down. Sometimes I wonder, Like, what would have happened if Oscar Taveras didn't die?
And that's kind of where all of this,
So that was
the impact that had, that death, is one
Yeah.
of the reasons they went out and had to go get Jason Hayward, and then felt when he left, they had to go get Ozuna.
Right.
It all started at that point, which you hate to say that was where things started to go downhill, but it had a huge effect on what the future of that outfield was going to be.
For those of you who don't remember, Oscar Taveras was, if not the best hitting prospect in baseball, he was one of the rising stars. Everyone,
Yes.
He was one of those. He was coming up, and you just knew that he was going to be this huge superstar. And he came up in 2014. Played in the playoffs. Played in the NLCS for the Giants. Not for the Giants. For the loss to the Giants. Played for the Cardinals. And during the World Series, when between Giants and Kansas City, he died in a car accident.
Yep. And
had a huge devastation on the team and the organization. There was an article on MLB.com about the possibility of trading Goldschmidt in a market where if you have a great chip, you can get a bunch of pieces back, because there's not a lot of teams willing to pull the trigger on an MVP caliber player. I'll tell you why I don't pull the trigger on that trade.
Okay.
I don't trust him to get a haul back. I don't trust him to make I don't trust Mozeliak to make that deal. Because if you're going to trade Goldschmidt, you got to get the equivalent of an Oscar Taveras back. You can't just get a couple of decent players. You have to get 2 building blocks for the team, either a frontline starter or a potential MVP hitter. Just out of my mind, like an Arozarena or an Alcantara or a Gallen. And I don't trust the guy who sent those players. I don't trust him to make that deal, which is, to me, the biggest argument to say, I got to take the car keys away from him.
Yeah. And it doesn't feel like a Cardinals move to trade somebody like a Goldschmidt. Very rarely do they trade veteran players that, still are cornerstones of the team away, because normally they're not having bad years, so they don't need to. But
they don't do that because they're usually the Cardinals. They're usually good.
But it's not. It's just not something that I could see them doing. I think they're more likely to trade expiring contracts. Goldie's still got one more year on his.
But what are you going to get for an expiring contract? You're going to get little piddly poo pieces there.
Well, if you're not going to keep them anyway, I mean, what would be the worth of somebody like a Jordan Montgomery or a Jack Flaherty at the deadline for a team that's looking for pitching? I mean, if they're going to leave anyway, which is what it all seems like is going to happen with both of them, better to get something than nothing, right?
What you could get from them is, if you're going to trade away some of your blue chip prospects, trading away the Montgomery and everything could fill in those spots in the minor leagues. Like, okay, we trade away our big prospect, but that hole is filled in by this deal with Montgomery. But that's kind of doing 2 things at once. They're not going to trade their blue chippers for a big, huge deal. They're not going to make like a Shane Bieber trade when they're on pace to lose 98 games.
Right.
So then you have to take a look at, well, what can we get for Goldschmidt? And that's when I say, I don't trust this guy to make the deal. So if it's not Marmol's fault, it's somebody's fault.
Yeah. I mean, Marmol didn't pick the players, and he's just doing what he can with what he's got. And when you've got guys who are underperforming, it's hard to say it's the manager's fault for not making them feel good about themselves to play better. I find that hard to believe at this level of baseball, that's what's going on. It usually starts in the front office with a guy who's making the decisions to build the team. And when he makes mistakes like he has, I mean, you and I talked about this in the offseason when Sean Murphy was available with Oakland. And Oakland, according to reports, wanted a package of, at the time, the Cardinals' #1 pitching prospect, which was Gordon Graceffo, Brendan Donovan, and Lars Nootbaar to get Sean Murphy out of there. And both of us said, okay, take him. Go. Why not? And there was so much blowback from Cardinals fans who were like, you can't make that deal. How dare you even suggest that you could trade somebody like Lars Nootbaar and Brendan Donovan? And I'm like, but who are those guys? Like, you're talking about guys who are just kind of good players. They're not crap, but they're not great. for a premium player to premium position who is thriving in Atlanta right now and didn't sign some crazy sick contract. He didn't ask for $200 million or anything. They signed him to a really solid contract, something kind of comparable to what you got Contreras on.
Contreras, exactly. Who is playing in the outfield 2/3 of the time.
And is completely lost at the plate. And you've got 4 more years in this deal. Like and who made the decision to do that? Not only Marmol, guys up top did that. And so,
well, look at JD. Look at I love your show. Your show's a lot of fun now because it's very analytical. It's kind of an autopsy report right now. It's CSI St. Louis right now. But I do hope for your sake things start to turn around. I think as I listed off, there's a lot of talent on the team. And the teams that are in first place are just hovering around 500. So there is still hope, Cardinal fans, which is the main reason why I wouldn't trade Goldschmidt, unless you could get like 2 premier blue chippers back and say, hey, wait, these are 2 pieces that we'll have for a long time.
Yeah. And that's something I've said too, was that at this point, you got to listen to anything. Because if somebody just comes at you with an offer that just blows you away, I mean, how do you say no at this point? For guys like him and for somebody like maybe like a Tommy Edman or whatever, guys that have a lot of worth to somebody who's trying to make a push for a championship this year and still young, still can play a bunch of different positions. I'm not saying I want to trade these guys, but at the same time, you got to listen, don't you?
All right, we got to wrap up this show. I recorded this before I could get people's answer to the trivia question, so I'll repeat the trivia question. That is, Jim Thome, in his 20-something year career, played for the Cleveland Indians. That's what they were called then. The Cleveland Indians, the Philadelphia Phillies, the Minnesota Twins, the Chicago White Sox, the Baltimore Orioles, and the Los Angeles Dodgers. And he played in the postseason with every one of those teams except one. What is the only team? That is a trivia question. First correct answer at Sully Baseball on Twitter or down here in the YouTube comments gets a shout out on the show there. So the one team that Jim Thome played for that he did not play in the postseason with. JD, where can people follow your show?
You can find us at LO_Cardinals on Twitter, at JD Sports Radio on Twitter, and wherever you get your podcasts.
Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter and Instagram. I am your pal Sully at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Sorting out the madness of a lost Cardinals season. This has been a Locked On MLB, Locked On Cardinals crossover. He's JD Heffron. I'm your friend Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.